You won't believe what happened in this quiet suburban neighborhood. What started as a normal day took a wild turn when a local HOA board member, who neighbors now call Karen, decided to take matters into her own hands. The target, a resident's electric wheelchair. But here's the twist. This wasn't just any resident. Turns out, the person she messed with was a retired district attorney. It all started over a petty disagreement, something about a ramp that didn't meet the community aesthetic, according to Karen. But what she did next shocked everyone. Tampering with someone's mobility device isn't just crossing a line, it's a serious offense, especially when that device is the only way someone can move around. At first, neighbors thought it was some sort of malfunction, but the truth came out fast. Security footage, witnesses, and one very determined ex-DA who knew exactly how to build a case. This story has layers: entitlement, abuse of power, and a very public downfall that no one saw coming. But just when you think justice is on the way, the situation gets even more intense. Because what happened after the police arrived left the whole community speechless and left Karen with a lot more to answer for. Stick around, this story is far from over. So, here's where things really start to unravel. The woman neighbors now called HOA Karen had a history, not with the law, but with nitpicking every little thing in the neighborhood. Whether it was garden gnomes, mailbox colors, or even wind chimes, she had something to say about everything. But no one ever expected her to go this far. The man she targeted, Mr. Daniels, had only lived in the neighborhood for a year. Quiet, respectful, kept to himself, but sharp as ever. After retiring from the district attorney's office, he'd hoped to enjoy a peaceful life. What most people didn't know is that Mr. Daniels had been involved in some serious criminal cases in the past. He'd seen it all, and he wasn't one to let things slide. It all started when he requested approval to build a small access ramp outside his front door for his electric wheelchair. Nothing fancy, just a way to make his life a little easier. The HOA initially approved it, until Karen caught wind of it and claimed it violated neighborhood appearance standards. That's when things turned ugly. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about a ramp. Neighbors started noticing strange things: screws loose, tire tracks in flower beds, power cables mysteriously unplugged. And the night before the wheelchair stopped working, someone was seen near Mr. Daniels' porch. After the incident with the unplugged wheelchair, things in the neighborhood started to shift. What used to be friendly nods and small talk at the mailbox turned into hushed whispers and side glances. Everyone was asking the same question: did Karen actually sabotage it, or was it just a coincidence? But Mr. Daniels wasn't buying the coincidence angle. Not after he reviewed the security footage from a small camera he'd installed, just in case. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. A figure, same build and clothing style as Karen, was seen crouching near the ramp just after midnight. No one else had a reason to be there. Mr. Daniels didn't want to jump to conclusions, though. He'd spent years in courtrooms. He knew how careful you had to be with accusations, but he also knew when something felt off. Meanwhile, the HOA started to split. Some members stood by Karen, saying she was just doing her job. Others, especially newer residents, started speaking out. Stories surfaced about past complaints that were quietly dismissed: missing decorations, bikes moved without permission, even a neighbor's garden hose being cut. It was always brushed off as coincidence. Then came the email. An anonymous message sent to several residents with photos, close-ups of damaged wheelchair components, and a blurry screenshot from the security footage. And that's when everything really began to spiral. The anonymous email changed everything. Once those photos started circulating, the neighborhood couldn't stay silent anymore. Group chats lit up. Doorbells rang late into the evening. People who had kept quiet for years suddenly found their voice. Someone had crossed a line, and all signs pointed to Karen. Mr. Daniels, staying calm and methodical like he had in court, gathered every piece of evidence: photos, timestamps, witness accounts. He didn't just want to be right. He wanted to make sure it stuck. He reached out to local law enforcement, carefully presenting everything without speculation. He knew how these things worked. No drama, just facts. But outside his door, drama was exactly what was brewing. Karen, clearly sensing the pressure, doubled down. She called an emergency HOA meeting, claiming she was the real victim, targeted, misunderstood, even harassed. She waved it all off as lies and doctored images. But by then, the damage had been done. Whispers had turned into conversations, conversations into phone calls, and now the story was spreading outside the neighborhood. The police showed up not long after, asking questions, reviewing the footage, and inspecting the ramp. Karen watched from her porch, arms crossed, glaring at Mr. Daniels, like he was the one causing all the trouble. But what she didn't know was that someone else had come forward, someone who saw her that night, and they weren't staying quiet anymore. Just when it felt like the walls were closing in on Karen, the story took a turn no one expected. The neighbor who came forward, the supposed witness, wasn't just any bystander. It was a former friend of Karen's, someone who had been on the HOA board with her for years, who knew the ins and outs of every behind-the-scenes decision, and they had receipts. Text messages, notes from past meetings, even private emails that hinted at a long pattern of targeting certain residents, mostly elderly or disabled, under the guise of neighborhood standards. Turns out, the electric wheelchair sabotage might not have been a one-time thing. Mr. Daniels may have just been the first person with the experience and resources to fight back. And as the former friends spoke with authorities, more residents started stepping forward, sharing their own stories of things going mysteriously wrong after disputes with Karen. Porch lights shattered, packages gone missing, even a pet gate tampered with. Meanwhile, Karen kept pushing back, loudly claiming everything was a smear campaign. But behind closed doors, panic was setting in. Her name was now being tossed around in local news circles. Her real estate license, something she'd kept quiet, was suddenly under review. What began as an argument over a ramp had grown into something much bigger. And the question on everyone's mind now wasn't just, did she do it? It was, how much more is going to come out? The pressure finally boiled over when police returned to the neighborhood, this time with a warrant. Karen watched from behind her blinds as officers approached her door. Within minutes, they were inside, gathering electronics, printed documents, even a set of tools from her garage that looked eerily similar to the marks found on Mr. Daniels' damaged wheelchair. It wasn't long before she was placed under arrest, right there on her own front lawn, as stunned neighbors looked on. The charges: property tampering, harassment, and obstruction of mobility, a serious offense, especially in a case involving a person with a disability. Mr. Daniels stood quietly nearby, no gloating, just a calm resolve. He knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up for people who didn't always have the strength or the background to fight back. But just when everyone thought it was over, a final twist came to light. During the investigation, officers discovered that Karen had been keeping files, not just on Mr. Daniels, but on nearly every resident she'd clashed with. Notes, schedules, even surveillance snapshots. She'd gone far beyond the role of HOA board member. It was like she'd turned the neighborhood into her personal game board. In the end, the ramp stayed, the wheelchair was repaired, and the neighborhood began to heal. But the damage Karen left behind, that would take a little longer to fix. In the weeks after Karen's arrest, things slowly began to shift in the neighborhood. People who barely spoke before were now checking in on each other, sharing updates, and even organizing small gatherings, something that hadn't happened in years. The HOA board was completely restructured, and new rules were put in place to prevent any single person from having too much control. For the first time in a long time, residents felt heard. Mr. Daniels continued to live quietly, but with a new sense of respect from his neighbors. He never wanted to be the center of attention, but people often thanked him for standing up when it mattered most. The incident with the sabotage electric wheelchair became a turning point, not just for the community, but as a reminder of how power can be misused in the smallest of places. As for Karen, legal proceedings move forward, and while the outcome is still pending, her influence in the neighborhood is gone. What started as a story about a ramp and a retired district attorney became something much bigger. A story about boundaries, accountability, and what happens when you stand up to the wrong kind of control. And that's where this story ends, but the lessons won't be forgotten anytime soon.